Introduce yourself.
Cheers. All right, boys. So my name is Chris. I host a podcast called Modern Wisdom and very kindly been invited here to talk to you guys about it. Like, men's mental health is a very difficult subject to talk about. There's still, no matter how many times the government tries to do an "it's okay to talk" or an "ask twice" campaign, I think that genuinely the way that men look at mental health, it's still with a huge ick factor. Like, it's not a very comfortable thing to talk about. It makes us feel weak. It makes us feel unattractive. It makes us feel low status. Like, it's not the sort of thing that we're supposed to open up about. And I wanted to take the opportunity today to have a conversation with you guys. One of the problems I have with the campaigns that we're seeing at the moment around the UK is I don't think it gets to the actual problem that we have with mental health. So what are some of the tactics that you can use to ensure that you continue to have a robust mindset over the next 6 months or year? What are some of the things that you can actually do, tactics that you can use so that you pull yourself out of a bad mood? What are some of the fundamentals that I've learned from speaking to Jordan Peterson or Ryan Holiday or Robert Greene or James Clear or, world-class thinkers when it comes to mental health and masculinity as well? And it's an open dialogue, so I'm happy for you to put your hand up at any point throughout this. If you've got something to contribute as well, I'd love that. Like, whatever it is, think of it like a live podcast, right? And I've just got 30 guests or something. So anything you've got to contribute, and again, it's going to help other people to get different insights. I'm one guy with one life and one perspective, and if you've got something else to say, then I think that's an awesome way to do it. And if you guys are up for that, then we've got, how long we got? We got about 45 minutes to an hour?
Yeah, 45 to an hour.
And we can talk about whatever you want. And if you want to dig into stuff or ask questions, then we're good to go with that. So the problem that I have, like I said, with a lot of the mental health campaigns is it doesn't remove the stigma about talking about what mental health's like. It just tells everyone that mental health is something that can be used as a virtue signal to make you feel good and get likes on social media. So again, everything gets commercialized. I wanted to explain my experience with mental health first, because from the outside looking in, a lot of you guys may have life sorted, but the inner experience can be quite different, and I think that I'm a good avatar for that as well. So I'm a club promoter. I've run events in Newcastle for 15 years. I've seen 1 million people go into nightclubs, done 1,000 events that I've stood on the front door of, and yet I've spent days in bed crushed under the weight of existence, like unable to get out of bed, terrified of explaining to my business partner why I can't go into the office that day because I'm going to feel ashamed or I'm going to feel guilty. And I didn't really know what was wrong. There wasn't anything actually wrong with life. Like, I didn't have some impending financial catastrophe. I wasn't losing a loved one. I wasn't in grief. My partner hadn't just split up with me or anything like that. And that gave me a lot of guilt and shame around the fact that, look at how many other people have it worse than me. All of these images you see of people that are in poverty, that are in third world countries, that are in your country and don't have any of the things that you have, and you feel very ashamed about the fact that it's like this. It's such a bourgeois, like, rich kid problem, first world problem to have. Oh, just the sheer fucking weight of existence is so high and I can't bear it. It's very shameful, right, to think that. And then to realize that you have that problem and you don't feel like you have any justification for it, you end up in very negative thought loops. So despite the fact that outwardly I was spending a night on the front door of a nightclub where 1,000 people knew my name every single night, and the girls would come up and they need VIP, and you get a kiss on the cheek and go home with one of them afterward, and then you'd say hi to all of the lads and you've got the likes on social media. Outward experience and inner experience can be very, very different. And that was something that I dealt with for a good chunk of my 20s. A big part of that, which I didn't realize at the time, and I'm sure that you guys with good training plans and good health and fitness have realized, is sleep impacts your mood in like a terrifying way, so much more than you would think. And as a club promoter, I was staying up late, 5.5 hours, 6.5 hours of sleep on average over 10 years of tracked sleep on my phone. So that was a chronic issue. And then for the first time ever during the pandemic, I had a stable sleep and wake pattern and was actually like, oh shit, like this is what 8 hours of sleep a night and a normal, like getting up at the same time every day, that's what this feels like. So that was my experience overall. And the way that I would describe what depression feels like, for those of you who maybe haven't suffered with it, at least acutely, it's kind of like drowning in thoughts. So it feels like you're swimming through your own consciousness, and there's just this weight of fucking pressure and rumination and neuroticism, and all that you're doing is just in these thought loops, thinking and thinking and thinking. It's not a very nice place to be. Like, you can be in a situation, in a bed, in a house that you love, with friends that you like, and still feel terrible. And that is a malady of the 21st century. The fact that we can have so much convenience. I can Deliveroo a Michelin star meal to my house whilst at Amazon Prime TV to watch an Oscar-winning Netflix show without leaving the room, and yet still have all of these problems and complaints and concerns. And I think that accepting the fact that mood isn't impacted by, or it's not always impacted by your quantifiable metrics of success or by the way that your life actually looks from the outside, that's a big first hurdle to get over for a lot of people. So that's my insight and that's my experience. That's how depression manifested for me. It meant that I wouldn't get out of bed for ages. I'd spend a lot of time sleeping in bed, not wanting to see people, not wanting to speak to people, making excuses, especially if any of you guys are business owners or have work for yourselves or have jobs where you can be less accountable and you're your own boss. No one's there to tell you, like, you need to get out of bed. You need to go and do this thing. If you don't have a wife or kids, like, there's no one there to pull you out of your own headspace. And for those of you that do have wives and do have kids, like, they're a really, really good tool. Like, they're also obviously a nice thing to have outside of being a mental health assistant, but they're a really good tool to pull you out of that because it forces you to get out of your own head, forces you to care about somebody else, right? So I wrote an email last week and I wanted to run through the biggest lessons that I've taken from the last 6 years or so of doing this podcast and speaking to people like Jordan Peterson, James Clear, so on and so forth. And the reason that I wanted to do this is because having individual lessons, there's about 12 in here, and having individual lessons means that there might be something that you take away, that you remember to do with mental health. And that one insight is going to make a big difference as opposed to an It's Okay to Talk campaign, which for all that it's done from a place of like goodwill, I'm not convinced it actually gets at the problem of giving us something. We're men, right? Like, you need a tool and a tactic. Like, why is it us that puts the IKEA stuff together? It's because we're good with instructions. So one final thing before I move on to these lessons is that a lot of male depression is treated how female depression is. So female depression gets treated by making them feel like they belong, like they're safe, like they're secure. And for women, that's something that really does improve their mental state. And this is through psychiatry treats it in this way, some cognitive behavioral therapy treats it in this way. But the problem is that men don't feel the same way as that. And a good example is in the Second World War, there were these patients in psychiatric wards, catatonic, men that had been laid in basically comatose states, like totally out of it for 6 years, 7 years, 10 years. And bombs started dropping. And what happened was there weren't enough people to drive the fire trucks and the ambulances to actually go and clear up all of the mess that was occurred due to the Blitz. And these people that had been in a comatose state for 6 years, 10 years, got up, started driving fucking fire trucks and ambulances. Remembering they wouldn't speak, they were unresponsive, lights in the eyes, none of that. A catastrophe occurs, they need to fix something and they've got the opportunity to do it. And they're able to stand up and go and drive a fucking fire truck. Why? Well, it's because if you give a man a purpose and the ability to achieve that purpose, he'll crawl over broken glass with a smile. And that's the difference between male and female depression. So with female depression, it gets treated by making them feel like they belong and like they're comforted and like there's a community around them, and that works. But male depression is very different, and making men feel like they belong. And I think that it doesn't really help either. I don't know, I mean, let me know what you guys think. Do you feel like the It's Okay to Talk and like those campaigns, what's your thoughts? Like, has anyone got any input about those? Do they resonate with you? Do they work?
I just think also, like, if, like, with men, like, if you've got something going on and then you've got that thought, and then the fact you see it out loud, it becomes a thing. So after I think it's a main thing for like men, like the fact that they don't like acknowledge it, because it's not until they acknowledge it sort of thing. So I think that's a big thing with men. So that's why it gets pushed under the carpet, because they don't want to talk about it, because then if they do talk about it, then it becomes
Makes it real.
Makes it real, exactly. Yeah.
What else? Anyone else?
I think it's the ability to become self-aware. Pretty much similar to what Nancy said there. Like, how many of us would actually sit and analyse our thoughts or actions, or we're never really scared to do that unless probed. You know what I mean?
Everyone feels it, but no one wants to open it up. Have a drink, is that all right? Just the water, thank you. So yeah, that's the difference, right? So what I'm going to try and give you today is some things, like actual things and lessons that I've learned, and one of them might stick. So the first one is you are not your thoughts. And this is a surprising thing to think, because it's like, if you're not the person that's speaking in your own head, then who the fuck is? But you're also able to talk to the voice in your head. Like when you think of something, you're able to look at the thought and go, shut the fuck up. Who are you talking to? Like genuinely, who the fuck are you talking to? Like there's only you inside of your own head. So when you realize that, you're like, okay, so there's a place that thoughts come from. And it's the same as like, don't think of an elephant, or realizing that as you go down the street, you don't know the next thing that you're going to think. So if you don't know the next thing that you're going to think, it's obvious that your thoughts aren't you. There is some sort of a distance between you. And what this means is we can avoid identifying with the things that we think. So we might have a particular self-image that we have around ourselves, or a narrative that we tell ourselves. You are X. You are good at this, bad at this. This is the type of person that everybody sees you as. Like, you should not identify with those thoughts any more than you identify with what somebody else on the street says. Because they're coming from somewhere that isn't you. Like, it's just this fucking chatter, this incessant bollocks that's coming out of some combination of how tired you are and how much you've had to eat and whether you hung over from last night and whether that training session was good and if you had an argument with your boss this morning. Like, it's not you. So realizing that you're not your thoughts and not identifying with them is a really important tool, because it provides you some distance, right, between the thing that you think in your head, especially, again, if you ever spend a lot of time on your own. Say you got a long drive, doing a long drive, and you sit and maybe you can't be bothered to listen to a podcast, subscribe below, or you've not got a good YouTube video or whatever to listen to. You sit there and it's just thoughts in your head. If you can't sleep on a nighttime, it's the same thing. Like, shut the fuck up. Again, who are you talking to? Like, you're talking to your own thoughts. And if you're not in control of them, then you shouldn't identify with them. So providing yourself a little bit of distance between those two is really important. And it's one of the most liberating things that I think I've learned. Another lesson is action is the antidote to anxiety. And this reminds us that you're not afraid of the future when you're moving yourself toward it. So if you're in control, if you're actually making steps toward doing something, even if it's just fucking 1 millimeter at a time, that makes a huge difference. Action is the antidote to anxiety. If you're feeling anxious about something, take one tiny little step. What is the next smallest physical action that you can take toward achieving something that's going to make you feel meaningful, right? Like, you do not feel scared about the future when you're moving yourself toward it. There's another mental model called direction over speed, right? So you can imagine that when you're aiming a missile, you can choose how fast it goes, and you also choose what direction it goes in. No matter how slow or fast it's going, if it's pointing in exactly the right direction, every single bit of movement that you make is contributing to you getting closer to your goal. And yeah, maybe you're not going to fucking PB today. Like, maybe today's session is you coming in and just like grinding through weights that you used to be able to do when you were like 19. And but I've got the session in, right? I've moved towards my goal. That's something ticked off on the list. Action is the antidote to anxiety. Again, to finish that off, if you are feeling bad, if you do feel like you are depressed one day, just trying to do tiny, tiny little actions, getting a shower, like doing the dishes, like these things make a huge difference, because they get you out of your own headspace, and they remind you, the same as the men that were stuck in comatose states, you've got a purpose and the ability to achieve it. Fuck, I did something. I did something today. Loneliness is a kind of tax you have to pay to atone for a certain complexity of mind. So this is from the School of Life, a guy called Alain de Botton, and it's an awesome YouTube channel if you want to subscribe to something new, little short videos about mindset and about psychology and how it works. Loneliness is a kind of tax you have to pay to atone for a certain complexity of mind. So the more unique that you are, the fewer people are going to be like you, right? Like if there's this big normal distribution of people here, and if slap bang in the middle is this like imaginary super normal person with no bizarre interests and no strange upbringing and no past traumas and no funny way that they say the letter S and no whatever, one arm's longer than the other that we all have, that person in the middle doesn't exist, and you're somewhere out on these fringes, and the further that you move out toward each of these sides, the less people are going to be like you. But what a lot of us choose to do is we compromise the person that we are because we want acceptance. We decide, oh, well, I'm going to actually curb off the weird elements of me so that I can try and move myself toward the middle because then there'll be more people like me and more people will like me. But that's not the way that it works. The way that it works is people love us for our peculiarities. Like no one's ever fallen in love with a chick and said, I just adore how normal she is. Like, I'm so turned on by how predictable all of the things that she's going to say are. Like, I'm just, the best thing about her is the fact that I know exactly what she's going to say next. No, like, we like people because they're unique, but we curb our uniquenesses because we're scared that we're not going to be accepted as the group. So, realizing that if you have an increase in your depth of insight, or if you're really, really into the gym, if you're really into diet, if you're really into training, if you're really into anything, like that's something unique about you. That's something that you can take pride and pleasure from. And curbing that off because you think it's going to make you feel more normal or more accepted, I'm not convinced that that's a good place to start. Rolling on from that, your weirdness is your competitive advantage. So no one can beat you at being you. Like you are N of one. One version, right? One collection of genetic predisposition, mum and dad, upbringing, the way you've dealt with past traumas, everything that you've got has created this version of you. That's not something to be ashamed of. Even the scars and the fucking awful things that you've been through and the shitty decisions that you've made, like you're still here. All of those challenges that you thought you were going to be destroyed by or you were worried were going to defeat you, like you've made it through, right? You're still here. And that's something that you can be proud of, and that's something that you can take strength from. Look, I thought that this fucking catastrophe was going to befall me. I remember how bad I felt. I remember how terrified I was. But I was fine, and now I'm here. The difference as well is when you're trying to be competitive with someone, all of those uniquenesses compound. So you become a market that only exists in one person. There's no one else that can compete with you at all, as long as you're trying to be you. The alternative is to try and be someone else, which at the very, very best that you can hope for is being the second best in the world at being that person. Like if I try and be Joe Rogan on my podcast, the best that I can hope for is being the second best Joe Rogan on the planet. Like, which is, I mean, it's not a bad title, but I don't want to be that. I want to be the number one Chris Williamson. Like that's where I want to position myself. And that's the same for you guys. One problem that we have, and a word that's talked about a lot, is presence. And being present in the moment, not being distracted, which is difficult because we've got constant interruptions from our phones, from devices, from thoughts, from people around us, demands that people have of us. Joy has to be found today, not tomorrow. If you can't be happy with a coffee, you won't be happy with a yacht. What that means is that you're always going to have problems. You're always going to have these distractions. If you can't find joy in the things that you do, in turning up at the gym and high-fiving the trainer on the way in, like that's an inherently joyful experience. Like it's not waiting for you tomorrow, it's waiting for you today. Like happiness, you can't become happy, you can only be happy. Like it's here in the moment, in this moment right now, where you're sitting with all of your buddies that you train with every day on a Sunday morning, chilling out. Like when you get to go and do that workout, like that's an opportunity to find joy right now. And it does verge on hippy-dippy stuff, I suppose, but there is a lot of truth in it. If you presume that happiness is to be found on the other side of the next house purchase or the next zero in the bank account, that game just doesn't stop. You're always going to be waiting. You're always going to be waiting for it. You can choose more for yourself. You can choose to be happy right now, in the moment, with the things that you do. And if you're not happy in the moment, then there is something that you can change. And the fact that you can change it is something to be happy about. You always have control. This is from a book by Sam Harris, which is a 1-hour read, which I highly recommend that you pick up, and it's Never Lie. So this is a weird one because a lot of the time we presume that small white lies can actually save people's feelings and that we can skirt around awkward conversations, whether it be with our missus or with friends in the gym and stuff like that. I think that the less that you can lie in life, the more I've found myself to be happy. Because over time, a good example, right? I was this club promoter, still am, standing in the front door of a nightclub, but I had all of these like different interests. I wanted to work out why we haven't been contacted by aliens and whether we can engineer human life to reach other planets, and like why porn stars decide to go into porn, and like all of these like random things. But that, like, standing on the front door of a nightclub isn't the place to ask, like, excuse me, mate, I've got a quick question for you. Have you ever considered where your fundamental attribution error comes from? Like, no, people don't want to have that conversation directly on the front door of a nightclub. So I'd curbed off all of these different versions of me, and when someone asked, oh, what have you been thinking about, or what have you done this week, or what have you been reading, or what have you been watching, I would say the thing that I thought they wanted to hear. So I'd tell them the version of me that I thought, like, promoter Chris, right? And I went on Love Island, so I did the first person through the doors of the season 1 of Love Island, and I did the same thing on there. I was playing a role of the person that I thought I was supposed to be in Love Island, because I sat down on the first day, and this girl sat next to me that we've coupled up with, and she talks about some tree in the distance. She mentions, like, why is the tree like that? And I knew what it was. And I was like, oh, it's the Coriolis effect of the Earth, or some bullshit. And she turned and went, oh, that's really interesting. Can you say some more interesting things? And I was like, fuck. That's not you. You're not supposed to be that person. You're supposed to be the, all right, mate, what's going on, mate? Like, you're supposed to be that guy in the front door of a nightclub. And I saw it happen inside of me. I was like, fuck, this girl's identified who you really are, and you've got terrified of the fact that that's the person that you're scared of showing. You don't want that person to come out because you don't think that it aligns with this preconceived idea. So for a long time, I'd lied, I'd created this persona around me, and you can hide yourself under so many of those that you have to dig them back out. And that's a lot of what the last sort of 5 or 6 years of my life has been, trying to strip away all of the fucking ideas about who I thought I was supposed to be, what I thought I was supposed to do. So trying to be as truthful and as honest as possible with yourself about the things that you're doing, about the way that you feel, like it really, really does make a huge difference. Like, it's a superpower. It's a fucking superpower. You never need to remember the thing that you said, because the thing that you said is the thing that you meant. And if you just constantly say the thing that you meant, and there's no narrative to stick yourself to. You don't have to worry about being caught out about something. All that you're doing is just constantly riding the crest of the thing that you're supposed to say. Another part of this is that your internal sense of self-worth is always keeping check, even if you aren't. So even if you think that you're not bothered about the lies that you tell or about the fibs that you make or whatever, there's a part of you, this little sort of clicker at the back, like a doorman on the front door of a nightclub, just going, there's another one, there's another one, there's another one. Like, if you can't trust your own word, what use is it? Why would you have self-confidence in yourself if you're constantly lying to people? Because you know when you're lying, even if it's just exaggerating the truth. And there's lies of omission as well as commission. There's the things that you don't say as well. There's the questions that people ask where you decide not to speak up. You decide to stay quiet, or you decide to miss out the bit, and you're like, oh, if I don't say this, then it's kind of not like lying. That doesn't mean that you need to be completely open about everything, but overall, being radically honest with yourself will change your life. And that book by Sam Harris called Lying, you can listen to it on Audible, it'll take an hour. And it's a very, very strong justification for why you shouldn't ever lie. Another one that's similar to that is keep promises to yourself. So imagine that you had a friend who you always invited out for lunch, and this friend sometimes rocked up an hour late, sometimes didn't show up at all. After a little while, you'd be like, I'm going to stop inviting you out. I don't trust you. You're not a friend to me anymore. Why would I be bothered about bringing you out to lunch? You are that friend to yourself. Like, if you keep on telling yourself that you're going to do a thing and you don't do it, over time, your faith in your own word degrades. If you say that you're going to stick to your diet fucking every Monday and every Tuesday you break your diet, over time, you're going to lose faith in yourself. If you say you're going to stop cheating on your missus, if you say you're going to stop smoking, if you say you're going to wake up on time, you're going to go for a run, you're not going to use your phone before 9 a.m., whatever it is, over time, your faith and your confidence that you can do something is just slowly going to degrade. And that's really dangerous, because then you become your own worst enemy, and we get back into thought loops and we start to identify with our thoughts. And the world's chaotic enough, right? If you can't trust yourself, the only person that you have direct control over, a chaotic world isn't going to be made any better, it's going to be made worse. Because the safe harbor that you have, which is supposed to be your own mind, your faith, your confidence that you can have agency and action and sovereignty over the things that you do, if you don't have that, then everything's fucked. You can build up your self-trust with smaller promises as well. So if you are in the situation, if this resonates with you, and you think, I don't have a massive amount of self-trust, I don't believe that I can achieve the things that I want to do, even the small things, whether they be getting up on time, or going to bed at the right time, or whatever, training enough in the gym, sticking to the diet. Start as small as possible. 1 push-up a day, like stupid stuff. I'm going to make sure that I always tell the missus that I love her when I get off the phone. I'm going to always make sure that I take a moment to be thankful that the kids walk through the door. Whatever the fuck it is, right? Make sure that you do that tiniest little commitment, because it's not about being a person that can achieve huge promises. It's about being the sort of person that can keep promises. That's the momentum that you get, right? The same as the guys when they walk in the gym. You'll see someone new that's maybe never trained before. It's a 40-year-old dude. He's like, right boys, I want to get in the gym. The first thing that the guys will tell them is, look, build up consistency. I don't care if you come in and you're doing an empty bar or no bar squat, air squats, when it's fucking max out squat day. The point is to build the consistency. Why? Because it's routine, because it's habit, and the same thing happens with your promises. Like, if you can keep promises to yourself, over time you will be able to do more and more and more. You can load that bar up, and you will be able to expand that domain of competence. To speak about Jordan Peterson, he has a concept, he says, clean up your room. And it kind of sounds dumb because he's speaking to men, not boys, like he's speaking to men. He's like, fuck, your room should probably be fucking clean if you're a man. But the point is, it's something that everyone has control over. Everyone can clean their room. And if you can do that, then maybe you can clean the kitchen, and maybe you can have that difficult conversation with your housemate, and maybe you can have that difficult conversation with your boss, and maybe you can leave your job for something else, and that's how your domain expands, right? You start with something that you know that you can do, and then you move on to things that right now you don't think you can. It's the same as in the gym. All of you guys will have walked in and been like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to lift that weight. You look at the biggest dude in the gym, and then over time, you get to the stage where you're like, yeah, I'm going to try and take that on today. It's the same with this. Something that I realized, especially I mentioned to do with nightlife and promo and a lack of sleep. And I thought that that was the way that my mood was. I thought I was chronically in poor mood, right? And it just turned out that I wasn't doing most of the things that make me feel good. 90% of issues can be solved with good sleep, a glass of water, a gym session, a walk outside, or a chat with a friend. Like, that's, I would, maybe even more than 90%. And if there is something that's going on where you need a little bit of headspace, what we immediately default to is perhaps sitting on the couch, maybe grabbing a can, maybe looking at our phone, maybe scrolling through Instagram or something, because it kind of makes us feel safe and secure. But if you go, right, if I can get myself to the gym, if I can go for a walk, if I can ring a friend, like the number of times that I've texted a buddy and been like, hey man, I need to talk, like, are you free? And they'll reply and be like, I've got 5 minutes, I'll nip out of work. And it's just, fuck dude, like I feel shit today. Right, talk to me, what's going on? And you don't even know. And you're like, I just want to fucking talk to someone. It's like, and they'll say something that takes you out of your own head, especially if you've got a dog. Like, fuck, I wish I had a dog. I don't think I'm quite ready for one given my lifestyle. But the ability to just take something else which isn't you and look at it and realize that it has needs and it's dependent on you. Or speak to a friend and realize that they have a life and they have a different perspective and they have their shit going on, and they see you as someone totally different. They see you as this competent individual going about life totally fine, whereas you just see your own fucking failures from a front row seat. blundering over yourself. And they're like, no, man, like, I love the way that you do this, and this is really cool, and do you not remember the last time that this happened? And you're like, fuck. Actually, maybe I'm making mountains out of my molehills of problems, and all of my friends see me for the things that I'm actually quite good at. Your framing is everything. So framing is actually it's a concept from pickup artistry. So when you're trying to chat up a chick, you want to control the frame, right? It's your frame. You are the person that is in control. You are the prize. You are the one that commands the operation and commands the perspective of what's going on, right? You're the protagonist. Your framing is everything, because imagine you guys are in the gym, you're doing a workout on one of the cardio days, and you've just finished, and the coach has said, like, and time, and everyone goes, and falls on the floor and is breathing, and there's sweat angels everywhere. That sensation is why you come into the gym. That heart's going, you're sweating, you're hot, it's got the taste of metal in the back of your throat, like, this place stinks. Like, that's what you're here for. That is exactly why you come into the gym. Now imagine that same experience occurred while you were sat in traffic, spontaneously. You would feel like you were dying. You would ring 999 or tell the person that you're with, like, fuck, something's going on. Well, why? That's the same situation. Like, you come in the gym for this thing, so why can't you accept it when you're in the car? Because your framing around what's happening has changed the entire perspective. You come in the gym, you realize that this is the sign that something's going right. This is something that I'm supposed to be here for. This is really fucking important. I like this. I've worked hard for this. I deserve this. When you're sat in traffic, you think you're having a heart attack. And the same thing goes for everything else as well. You can control how you frame situations. Okay, I've got to have an awkward conversation with my boss today. Or I've got to have an awkward conversation with the missus today. That could be something that I should be scared of. That could be something that I think is a big challenge that I can't overcome. Or this is an opportunity for me to see how I can perform when the stakes are quite high. This is an opportunity for me to see whether I can hold a conversation and keep my nerve and stay balanced and calm when I know that there's emotions on the line. This is an opportunity. Another good example, so Ben Bergeron's Chasing Excellence, which is a really fucking good book as well, about how he got Katrin David's daughter to the podium on the CrossFit Games 2016 or 17. And he talks about one of the nights where she couldn't sleep. So she found herself sleeping really, really badly and woke up the next day having had four hours sleep. And there was two ways she could have framed that. She could have framed it as, fuck, today's going to be a write-off. This is absolutely pointless. I'm so useless. Why haven't I slept enough? That's one way to frame it. Another way to frame it is, this is an opportunity for me to see how I can perform when I'm underslept. I've got bad nutrition. My mindset isn't in the right place. How interesting that I've got this opportunity. And then 1 year later, all of the CrossFit Games athletes get told, pack your bags, pack a passport, we're flying out to the ranch 1 day sooner than you thought the CrossFit Games was going to happen. No one had slept, no one had had their nutrition, you only could take, I think, maybe one person out of your team. That's exactly what she was preparing for. So the people for whom they couldn't control the frame of that situation, oh shit, I was supposed to be in that bed with those sheets, with my coach, with my nutritionist, I'm not going to have my meals, I'm not going to have this. She's trained for that. She's got herself into the situation where she can go, I know how I perform when things are suboptimal. And the same thing goes for whatever situation it is that you guys have. Stay curious about what's coming next. Fuck. This could be really cool. This could be really interesting. What might I learn by going in and having this conversation? What might I learn by trying to do this training session when I'm a little bit underslept, when I'm a little bit undernutritioned? Don't practice what you do not want to become. So this is reminding us about how habits work, right? Every action that you take is a vote for the kind of person you're going to be in the future. So if you do a thing today, it's more likely that you'll do that thing tomorrow. And that includes negative self-talk and a lack of compassion as well. If you decide to break your diet today, it's more likely that you're going to break your diet tomorrow. If you decide that you're going to miss training today, it's more likely that you're going to miss training tomorrow. But if you decide to train today, it's more likely that you're going to train tomorrow, and so on and so on. The way that our brains work, the way that myelin sheaths get wrapped around inside our brain is that they're constantly trying to look for reinforcements, right? constantly trying to look for what's the quickest way that I can shortcut this, and the quickest way is to create a habit around it. So there was a lady who went horse riding, or a girl that went horse riding, and because it was the one time when her parents weren't around, and she was around so much smell that her parents wouldn't be able to tell what was going on, she used to smoke with her friends. So she'd be on horseback smoking, which is like a pretty pimp thing to do. And this was when she was 16, 17. She got pregnant quite young. She got pregnant at 18 or 19, had a kid, and then 10 years later, she decided that she wants to start taking her daughter horse riding because she did it as a kid. She wants this bonding experience. I did it with my mum. I'm going to do it with my daughter, so on and so forth. Hasn't smoked for 10 years. Gets on horseback, goes out in a field, wants a cigarette. Wants a cigarette because she has associated a particular type of action with that. Don't practice what you do not want to become. So every time that you think about the little opportunities that you have to make a decision about whether or not you want to have that cookie, about whether or not you want to hit snooze once or twice. Like, if hitting snooze is a part of your long-term plan, if you want to be the sort of person that hits snooze, that's fine. But if you don't, you can't do it. Like, if you do it, you're making it harder for you tomorrow. Every single action that you make is a vote for the future kind of person that you're going to be. Every single one of them. Whether you have a good conversation with your boss or your missus or the guy that does the petrol pump, like, every single time that you do that, what's the type of person that you want to be? Little action, little action. I want to be the kind of person that fucking, when I turn up, the guy at the checkout counter actually smiles because he thinks, fuck yeah, like that guy was cool, he's brightened my day. Like, be that person. If you're the miserable person to them, the next time that you go and speak to them, it's more likely that you're going to be the miserable person. And the same thing goes for everything else. Training in the gym. If you know that there is a particular piece of form, a cue that you need to do. A lot of people are quad squatters, right? So we don't send our hips back because we haven't done tons of glute work like girls do. So we rely on our quads a lot. If you know that that's something that you need to work on, every single rep that you do that doesn't engage your glutes makes the next rep less likely to engage your glutes. Like, you have to go for each individual action as well as you can. Don't practice what you do not want to become. Gratitude is the foundation of happiness. So this is the fundamentals of positive psychology. I've had a ton of positive psychologists on. Susanna Hallinan, who's the happyologist, like got a doctorate in happy science, basically. And she said that if you're not formally practicing gratitude, you're building happiness on a very unstable foundation. And if you've not done formal gratitude practice, this can kind of feel a bit strange. It's not the sort of thing that we usually rely on. We're always striving toward what's next, right? That's what men do. We try and create things, we try and achieve things, and looking backward and sort of patting ourselves on the back, unless it's an awards night or something, or we get some sort of commendation, or it's a new PB. We'll do that. But I mean, you'll celebrate PBs for longer than you'll celebrate like other shit that you do in your life. We don't actually spend that much time being thankful and grateful for the shit that we've achieved. And we have achieved a lot. Everyone has. Like, everyone's here. I mean, actually, the fact that you haven't been hit by open traffic is like quite impressive. So taking time is really important. There's a little book called The 6-Minute Diary that'll last you for 6 months. And it's 20 quid on Amazon. And you can do it every morning and every night. And it takes 3 minutes in the morning and 3 minutes at night. And it formalizes this gratitude practice. And it's really good. Like, I've filled in 10 of them now. I've used it literally for like 6 years. And an alternative is, if you are feeling bad, if you're having a bad day, just force yourself to try and think of a thing that you're grateful for. Like, genuinely think of a thing that you're grateful for. Like, I'm really, really grateful for the way, the relationship that I have with the guys that I work with in my gym. I'm really, really grateful for the fact that I don't have any money worries at the moment. I'm really, whatever it is, I'm really, really grateful for the fact that I got to listen to a good podcast, or my favorite band's released a new song, or whatever the fuck it is, right? Like, that one thing, and just allow it as best you can to sit inside of you and really, really feel the gratitude that you have for whatever it is that's going on. The fact that it's sunny outside halfway through October, like, it was pretty cool. I had some good music on driving here, and I had my sunglasses on, and I was like, yeah, this is fucking sick. Like, so looking back, I can be like, yeah, I'm fucking grateful for that. That's something I can genuinely be thankful of. You cannot be depressed and grateful at the same time. It doesn't work. Like they're antitheses of each other. Gratitude's a really big fundamental. And the final lesson, is that you are the sky, everything else is just the weather. Your anger, frustration, anxiety, and everything else is just a visitor in your mind. Sometimes it gets cloudy so you can't see the sun, but it's always there if you just breathe and let go of what's holding the clouds in place. What this means is that our anger and our emotions and the things that we frustrate ourselves about, a lot of the time it's us that perpetuate those. So yeah, something's happened, we get caught up in traffic, or someone turns up late for a meeting, or doesn't show up for a meeting, or whatever, we can't make it to training, or training session goes shit, or we miss our new PB, whatever it is that we get frustrated about. Like that's just a little thing, right? That's just happened, that's a tiny little fragment of time. The thing that perpetuates it is you thinking about it, and then thinking about you thinking about it, and then getting irritated at the fact that you can't stop thinking about it. Like that is what perpetuates it. The fundamental way that I believe that we're built to exist is just in peace. And that's not someone sitting on a mountaintop cross-legged. That's simply not being perturbed by life, right? That we're just supposed to be at rest, that we're just supposed to be content with what's going on. And yet, we're able to ruminate about this person that slighted us, or this situation that occurred that we're really unhappy about. And that perpetuates the problems. We suffer so much more in imagination than in reality. Like the things that we do that cause problems are minute. And the way that we think about them and how long we continue to pull them over and over. Like if you try and if you look at something that makes you angry and you don't perpetuate it, you will be angry for about 2 minutes. And then it fucks off. The things that are holding the clouds in place over the sun is the fact that maybe you actually get a bit of satisfaction out of it, out of resenting someone, or out of bringing up a situation because it makes you feel vindicated. But again, if we're going to find joy in the moment, and if we can't be happy with a coffee, we won't be happy with a yacht. Like you're taking yourself out of the only gift that you've got, which is this moment now. Like everyone here is breathing. I know that the pandemic for people that are our age with our build and our fitness is probably not that big of a deal, but you'll have all known someone probably that lost their life to the pandemic. Like, fuck, if that's not the biggest existential kick in the dick that anyone's ever heard of, like, look, we're here. Everyone's made it here over the last year. That's really, really fucking important. That's something that everyone should take a lot of pride and a lot of solace in. Like, don't waste it. Don't waste your time. So I'll open up the floor to any questions or any thoughts or any comments that anyone's got. I think we've got about 15 minutes left. Yeah, man.
So one of the questions that I wanted to ask was kind of related towards the kind of 12 life lessons that you've already learned within this last year. And obviously when I go to some of these talks, like I went to IFS, I went to James Smith Book Talk, and obviously like all these kind of solutions to a lot of the problems that we have, it's great that we get those, but what kind of actionable steps could you recommend to everybody here that they can go away today and be able to kind of implement them straight away? That makes sense?
Awesome question. Thank you. So some of them are more actionable than others. If you're feeling down, go for a fucking walk. Like just get up and go for a walk. Grab a glass of water on your way out of the door. And I know if we're talking real chronic depression, acute depression, like harsh acute depression where you can't get out of bed, or if you're feeling really, really bad, you need to break that down into the smallest possible steps that you can. The next action. What is the next physical action that moves me toward my goal? Chris said, that fucking lad said that day that I was in the gym that I need to go for a walk. Okay, I need to pull the covers off me. I need to put one leg out of the bed. I need to sit up. Right, fuck, I've sat up. I was laid down 2 seconds ago and I didn't think I could move. Right, what's the next physical action? I need to put some shoes. I need to put some shorts. I need to grab a glass of water. Individual steps, that's one of them. It's trite to say it, but a mindfulness practice is so fucking important. Like to be able to spend 30 days just trying meditation to see how it works for you. Headspace has a free trial. Waking Up by Sam Harris has a free trial. Calm has a free trial. All of these are options. And if you've never done any mindfulness practice, I really, really recommend that you try it out because it will give you that distance away from your thoughts. You are not your thoughts, right? You are the sky. Everything else is just the weather. These are insights from meditation. In terms of never lying, you need to be intentional. So you need to think to yourself, when you have the opportunity to say two different things, if you have the opportunity to lie, or you have the opportunity to tell perhaps an uncomfortable truth, just think about it beforehand. Take a moment and go, all right, that fella said, have a crack at being a little bit more truthful. I'm going to see I'm curious to see what happens if I try and do this. If I have a conversation with someone and they say, hey man, like, is everything all right? And if you're not, don't say, like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, you actually say, do you know what it is, man? I've had a bit of a shit week. Like, just see what happens. Action is the antidote to anxiety. So a next action for that would be, what is the next physical action that you can take? That would be a way to instantiate that. Loneliness is a kind of tax, and your weirdness is your competitive advantage. With both of those, it relates to truthfulness. So not hiding the person that you are, not trying to hide that persona away. Other things that I would do that aren't related to these lessons, but I think are really fundamental for mental health, would be to have a morning routine. And that can only be, you don't need half an hour or an hour to do this, like 10 or 15 minutes is enough. Upon waking, I would highly recommend that you ditch your morning coffee. I know that this is going to be like blasphemy to some people, but you're taking more caffeine in first thing when your adenosine system, which is what caffeine acts on, it binds to the adenosine receptors. That's not active for the first 90 minutes of the day. Your adrenal system is. So if you wake up on a morning and you grab a glass of cold water with a little bit of lemon juice and some salt, or you can just have nothing, but you do not need that coffee first thing in the morning. It will make you feel a bit more anxious, but it won't make you feel any more awake, and you'll sleep worse on the night because you've had extra coffee, because you've had one in the morning that you didn't feel, then you have your next one 2.5 hours later. You can just wait, just delay it by an hour and a half. Go for a walk. Getting sunlight into your eyes, it down-regulates the amygdala response that we have. It means something called open gaze, which is where you can see a big scene with locomotion, so you're moving through a wide scene. That naturally makes us feel more calm. I shit you not, even 5 minutes. Like, even if you're like, fuck, I've got to drive to Manchester today or something, like, just get 5 minutes of outside, just do a little loop around like the garden or wherever. It will make a huge difference. A formalized gratitude practice on a morning. If you can get morning walk and gratitude, you are ahead of probably 99% of other people. If you can add meditation into that mix, amazing. And if you can add a little bit of reading into it as well, you probably need, for all of that together, you need about half an hour. And if you can do it, you know that before most people have maybe even got out of bed, that you've done a ton of things that are contributing to your mental health. So there's some. Anything else? Anyone else? Come on.
And then next one, in terms of, I know you're big on productivity and stuff like that, trying to be as productive as possible, but do you struggle to switch off? I know a lot for myself in terms of mental health issues is when I'm not busy, kind of flipping the switch, I struggle to take like even one full day off. How do you find that for yourself?
Yeah, I have the same challenge. So being able to take pleasure in downtime is a difficult one. Going on holiday, taking breaks, because we've attached our sense of self-worth to how hard we work and the outcomes that we get from work. And we're terrified that if we don't do that, we won't get the outcomes, we won't bolster our sense of self. So again, with that, if one of the guys decided to bring a new movement or a new workout type in here, you would go, fucking hell, that's interesting. I want to see how I get on. Like, this is another challenge for you. It's not weakness or a lack of conviction or a lack of productivity. It's another opportunity for you to add something into your radar. Like, you know the fact that you can't relax by taking time off is a weakness. It's part of your FIFA like player stats is like one of them's at 22. And you're like, shit, I need to work on that. So every time, like, plan it in and go, okay, I'm going to take half a day off and I'm going to see how I feel. And I'm going to see what that actually feels like to me. Like, this is another productivity challenge. Like, I want to accumulate the ability to type fast and use keyboard shortcuts and have a morning routine and blah, 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 all of this stuff that we want to do. Another one of those things is I need to be able to rest. One of the reasons that I used to have these little relapses where I'd be in bed for half the day is because I'd worked too hard. And I don't know whether you've ever done it, but I realized after a while, I was like, that's a miniature breakdown. It wasn't like sweating and shaking in the bed and, you know, like being completely unresponsive, but that's what a breakdown is. You've worked so hard for so long and you've wound yourself up so tight that something snaps. And that to me was, okay, I need to play a longer game. Like, this is an endurance workout that's going to hopefully last like 80 or 90 years. Like, I need to do this in a more holistic way. So I would say don't feel ashamed about the fact that you can't not work. Like, that's something that I suffer with, and I'm sure that tons of the guys in here suffer with as well. Treat it as an opportunity to overcome a challenge, the same as training when you haven't fully prepared. This is something, another skill that you need to acquire. You need to be able to relax. You can still fulfill your desire for productivity and achieving things whilst not doing your primary work obligations or whatever it is. So you can say, I really want to take up hiking or MMA, or I really want to spend today watching that new movie that I've been looking forward to watching, or whatever it is. Like, those are things, again, they're little skills that you can add on. They can actually make you feel like you're progressing. Like, the progress that your competitive advantage in whatever industry it is that you do comes from the fact that you're driven. You're going to lose your drive if you push yourself too hard, and you still have the opportunity to channel and funnel that drive just into something that's a little bit different than work. Does that help?
Yes, spot on, Jim.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I was going to touch on the point of like, I like the action is the antidote to anxiety. And I think if we're asking questions like, what action should we take, or what should I do, what's going to improve me being overwhelmed with stress, I think we take a bigger picture of that. If we look at a vision, and if we apply a vision of where we want to be, an identity of who we want to be associated with, or who we want to be associated as, I think if we get that vision, we then can straight away see what our individual actions. So we might not all have the same action to take home and go, right, reading's going to make me better at whatever it is I want to achieve. That might not necessarily correlate with our vision, our identity, where we want to be. Our goal might be improving our physique. It might be to save up and get a house, get a new car, whatever it is. Our individual actions that we might take, 30 minutes at the start of the day, need to be contributing towards that end goal, towards that vision. I think if it is, I want to be more knowledgeable about what it is I do, then yeah, reading a book about what you want to do is going to be that. And as Ross mentioned earlier, if we don't get prompted, if we don't ask these questions about our vision, where we want to be, that action, that first action, is just going to be wasted effort, wasted time, because it doesn't correlate, it's not falling in line with our direction.
That's a really, really good point. I'm genuinely convinced that the ultimate productivity tool is just getting really, really fucking clear about what you want in life and then ruthlessly culling everything that doesn't contribute to it. Like, that's productivity. If you just did the things that you needed to do that contributed to the end goal that you were trying to get, you wouldn't need time management, because what we're getting distracted by, you do not have a time management problem, you have an attention management problem. You have a goal direction problem. If you can try and look at your weight is a lagging measure of your eating and your training habits. Your bank account is a lagging measure of your spending and your earning habits. The lead measures are, what do I buy that coffee, do I not? Do I go out for dinner, do I not? Do I go to training today, do I not? Those are your lead measures. Your lagging measures are your physique over time, your bank account over time, your happiness over time. All of the things that we've spoken about today, and it's a really, really good point, contributes to the end goal, the lagging measure of what is the quality of life, the quality of mindset that I've got. If I don't want to do my morning routine today, let's say that your morning routine includes some mobility because you know that your overhead position is really, really poor. So instead of doing the reading thing that I mentioned, you're like, right, I'm going to do, speak to the boys. Dude, can you just give me like a 5 or a 10 minute like mobility thing? I'll grab a band and I'll do some like internal, external rotation, whatever it is. That each morning is going to, some days you might be fired up for it, but most days probably not. You're like, this is going to suck dick. So you're not doing it for that. You're not doing it for the lead measure. You're doing it for the lagging measure that in 6 months' time, your overhead position is going to be shit hot. That's why you're doing it. So connecting with, okay, where do I want to be? And what are the individual actions that I need to take every single day that get me toward that? That's power. Yes?
I guess kind of given that, how do you balance presence or finding joy in the coffee with that longer term planning of, man, I really want that job? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So you have two modes. You have a planning mode and an execution mode, right? And they don't work together a lot of the time because planning involves stepping back. So guys that are sort of quite productivity minded may struggle with this. Taking time to plan involves not taking time to execute. which means that you have to take time away from what you're doing. You need to sit back and take half a day or something to go like, right, fucking, where am I? Do I want to buy a new house? Do I want to get a new car? Do I want to go to the gym? Do I want to lose weight? Do I want to gain? Right? Like actually sit down. The 4 areas that I would say are good ones to go into would be career, which would include finances, relationships, that would include friends and partners, personal development, that would include sort of habits and other hobbies and stuff like that, and health. So you got 4 areas, right? You can do in a couple of hours. What would success over the next 3 months look like? What would I have had to achieve in this domain in 3 months' time for me to look back and consider it a success? Would it have been, I want to gain 10 kilos on my back squat? Would it have been, I want to lose 2 pounds of weight? Would it be, I want, whatever the fuck it is. That's your planning, right? And then your execution mode is just working for the boss. Like you are your own boss. So you sit down and you go, right, the next 3 months, this is what we're doing. What are the things that I need to do in order to be able to get 10 kilos on my back squat? What are the things I need to be able to do in order to save $1,000? Whatever. Then once you've done it, you're just executing. You've got the plan, go out and do it. And you're working for the boss. The person that wrote that down is the person that was planning. The guy that goes into fucking battle isn't the guy that's planning, and that's you. You're the person that's going and trying to gain the back squat, lose the weight, increase the bank account.
I think a good way that I've tried to execute that is a lot of things I've applied to training, I've applied it to things I've achieved or done in life, whether career swap or building different things, and I've kind of macroed it and microed it, which is exactly what you said. That macro is the big idea of what you want in 3 years, 1 year, 3 months, and then what can you do each day to achieve that. And that could just be the first bit of getting out of bed. And that's worked for me over time. Sometimes I've not known what I've wanted, and that's scary. If you don't know where you want to be in 3 months or 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
But it's okay to try different things and fail. And if you listen to Chris's podcast and what he says, like the only way you will learn is to fail. There's no one achieved excellence or greatness or achieved anything big without failing 10, 100 times more than they've actually achieved something.
That's a really good point to talk about the fact presumption that we're supposed to have some fucking like life's purpose that's all sorted out. Yeah, you're supposed to have this thing, you're supposed to know what you're supposed to do. Fuck knows. Fuck knows. Like, if that's the case, just choose a thing. Choose the closest approximation to something that you think might be right. So, perfectionism, which is what you're aiming for. You're saying, until I have the perfect goal, I'm not going to have a goal, right? So I'm going to continue to just cycle my wheels and not really go in a particular direction. Perfectionism is procrastination masquerading as quality control. All that you're doing is thinking, right, this is virtuous, I'll get my, until I've upgraded my MyFitnessPal and I've got the perfect spreadsheet written out, there's no point in dieting because obviously I haven't got all of the stuff sorted. I don't actually know if I want to, maybe I want to get bigger, but maybe I want to lose weight, but blah, blah, blah. Just pick a thing. And this is why giving yourself a morning or a couple of hours or whatever to go through it. It's like, look, there's 2 hours to do this in. I have 2 hours to work out what I want to do in health, career, relationships, and like personal development. What would have had to have happened within the next 3 months for me to have looked back on these 3 months and said it was a success? You have 2 hours to do it, and at the end of it, something needs to be down on the fucking piece of paper. Like, if it's not down there, then you've wasted 2 hours. So just pick a thing. Pick whatever the closest thing, and as if you go, fuck, I really don't know what I want to do. Ask a mate. Dude, what would be a cool thing for me to get? I want to get my first muscle up. Right, there we go. That's it. So I've spent 3 months working on muscle ups. Well, maybe I should have worked on my back squat. Or maybe you should, but you didn't think of that. So just fucking think of something and do something. Because the alternative to getting a muscle up in a month, that in 3 months' time, is like not getting anything. Like it's a significantly better situation. Anyone else? Anything else? Yeah, man.
What tools do you use to separate yourself from your thoughts? So a lot of the time you create stories in your head and most of the time they're negative, and that's what takes you out of the present. What tools do you have available to stop that from happening?
So mindfulness is the biggest one. You need to be able to step into your own programming and detach yourself, right? So there's something that's come up in your mind and you start to ruminate about it, and you want to be able to detach yourself from that thought process. There's something called the mindfulness gap, and it's a little beat that happens in between stimulus and response. So something occurs, and then you just have a moment to think, that just happened. How do I want to respond? Like that is, I've done about 1,000 sessions of meditation over the last 5 years-ish, which is like nothing compared to some of my buddies, and absolute pittance compared with some of the people that I've spoken to on the show. And if all that I get from my meditation practice is the mindfulness gap, which I have most of the time, that's a win. Like if my training in mindfulness just perpetuates the fact that I can control the beat in between the stimulus and the response, that's a fucking win for me. It means that you don't fly off the handle. It means that you make more rational, better decisions. Other things in terms of tools to distance yourself would be put your phone down. Like when you've got your phone in your hand, it's just distracting you from whatever it is that you're supposed to think about. It's just this very sort of automatic, very passive experience. You're not actively thinking about anything. So I would say put the phone down. I would try and do some sort of mindfulness practice. And even if you try meditation and it doesn't work for you, like just think when a thing happens, just fucking wait for the emotion to arise. Someone cuts you up in traffic, like wait for the emotion to arise inside of you. Do I really need to get pissed off about this? No, probably not. Like it doesn't matter. You've got an awkward conversation with the boss tomorrow. Yeah, cool. Do I really, really need to get worried about this, or am I going to deal with it? Here's another one, right? So I have this buddy called Andrew Tate, who's a 4 times kickboxing world champion, multi-millionaire that lives in a castle in Romania. He's like a real-life James Bond villain. And he used to buy a lot of fast cars before he had any money. And I always used to mention it to him. I was like, look, dude, like, are you not worried that you're going to basically spend so much money that you can never make it back? And he's like, no, I've got faith that future Andrew will sort it. Like he had so much confidence in his future self because he knew he'd been through like 2 decades of being one of the fucking hardest men on the planet in kickboxing. He knew that he was able to get it done. So have faith in your future self. Again, everyone here has been through a fucking pandemic that's decimated mental health. It's destroyed businesses. It's actually killed people. Like everyone here's made it through. You're like, fuck, if surviving a pandemic is not enough backup, enough of a guarantee that you're probably pretty resilient, I don't know what is. So yeah, I would say put your phone down, try and have a mindfulness practice, rely on that mindfulness gap, and have faith that you're going to get it sorted. Like whatever it is that you're up against. You've beaten everything so far. You're literally batting 1,000. Like you've never missed a beat. Everyone's here. It's like you don't have that much to worry about. Anyone else? Anything else?
Chris, something I wouldn't mind your thoughts on as well, is something like, you know, obviously we're doing actions now to be the future of what we want to be. I think sometimes if you plan too far ahead, it can have like a negative effect almost. That's something that I've found personally anyway.
What, like? Give me an example.
So, for instance, business-wise, planning so far ahead and makes every day like feel like a negative almost because you're not there yet. So something I'm working on most recently is just bringing everything back to like sort of 3 months, 6 months as opposed to
5 years.
What's the point? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That's something that's become more aware to me most recently from a couple of good conversations. So just not make the mistake of planning too far ahead of how you want to be in terms of your actions now. Do you know what I mean?
Correct.
I think that's something that's become quite a revelation myself.
I think the point now though is the fact that you've actually took a plan, the fact that we have an idea of where we want to be, even if it is miles in the future, the fact that we've got an idea of where we want to be is better than no plan at all. I think before we leave, I would like everyone to kind of read off them 4 topics: the professional, the personal, the financial, and the health. If everyone was to set even the dead basic, even the totally obscure goal of each of those 4 categories, and then review it within 3 months, whatever, and if you progress towards it, it's only progress there. So I think even at it, like I know business-wise, I know me and you on the same page of where we want to be and stuff, but then reflect it back and then go, right, let's scale this back where we're going to be in the next 3 months. It's a lot more like, you see the steps then, the steps are actually visual every single day, whereas out of 3 years, there's nearly 1,000 days, over 1,000 days there, every single day is so minute. That's where the negative spin can come across, in my opinion, where there's so tiny them steps every single day, whereas scroll down to the year, it's a third of the size, then you do start to see those then single day steps are a bigger chunk of that process. But yeah, I would love everybody to take an action point away before you leave and set a goal, a vision of where you want to be on each of those 4 points. And
You've got until the end of the year, right? Pretty much. Like it's 2.5 months-ish, a little bit tight, probably going to lose a little bit for Christmas. But if you can get a 2.5 month plan to take you up until the end of the year for those things, like the goal for this, let's say that we want to do this, because again, I've been harping on about how men need to have action and we need to have plans and stuff like that. I think that's a really good way to do it. It's up to you guys you could even put people into breakout groups of like 5 or something like that and do 10 minutes of just discussing about different options and your thoughts on this. That might be an idea before we go straight into training. The goal of this next 2.5 month period, if we're going to do it, isn't to try and nail some fucking goal. It's to try and learn about the difficulties that you're going to face, because when it comes to the end of December and you do your year's plan, you go, right, I know for a fucking fact that actually a morning routine takes well longer than I thought. I know that I run out of motivation if I try and do something to do with this. It's just stress testing. It's just a game. The next 2.5 months is just a game. And the goal, it's a warm-up set, right? The goal is to go into 4 working sets, split into quarters across 2022. So just take the next 2.5 months as play. Like, all right, I'm going to see if I can fucking get my first muscle up. I'm going to see if I can get whatever the fuck it is in the gym. Doesn't need to be crazy. What do I learn? And then how can I implement that ready for the next year? Because you will get motivation at the end of the year, like new year, new me. Like everyone always has a bit of a kick up the arse around about then. And if you can split that year into 4 quarters, 4 90-day sprints, that's all it is. 90 days, it's nothing. 4 little 90-day sprints across that year, and you go, fuck, like how much can I achieve in that? And then you look back, and I promise you, especially if you use like Apple Notes or something on your phone, so that you can actually go back and see how you got on. Man, I look back at the things that I tried to achieve in 2017. Like I wanted to have a meditation practice, or I wanted to get to my first 20K or something on YouTube, or like get my first sponsor on the podcast. It was like 2018. Like I want to get sponsored by the end of the year. And I'm sponsored by like all of the companies that I absolutely adore, like MyProtein, Reebok, BetterHelp, like all of these companies I really, really care about. I look back and I'm like, fuck. Like I have actually made progress, but if we never check in, you never realize. Like if it wasn't for the fact that you know how much weight's on a fucking bar, you wouldn't know that you were squatting anymore. Like, yeah, it feels a bit heavier, but you'd be like, oh, yeah, probably, but maybe my performance today could have been a bit better. So I'm happy to split up into little breakout groups if we think that that would be useful, or if there's something else that you guys would rather do instead, I'm also happy to do that.
Again, start the process of actually analysing and reflecting.
No time like now, man.
Can I ask one more thing before?
Of course you can.
One of the things that I think people find is this concept of meditation or mindfulness is quite like a big daunting process. You think it's like Buddhist and it's deep and you've got to spend all this time. I come from a background in like chronic pain. And one of the simple strategies we have for people who are again in anxiety is just simple sensations. What can you smell? What can you hear? What else can you feel in that environment? So if you're getting stuck into that headspace, sometimes you just need to put attention into another thing. And it's the same for pain. If someone's got a chronic knee pain, I say to them, in that scenario, what can you actually see? What can you smell? That, in a sense, is the fastest form of meditation or mindfulness. Just putting your head into a new place. Carries over to loads of things, but it is very, very simple. So I think that can be a part where we don't have to go so deep into thinking we have to.
Absolutely. That's what we were talking about with your man who was saying, how do I distance myself from my thoughts? I've got something that's in my head that I need to get out of my head. All right, well, just fucking enjoy that bird flying around over the far side, or call a friend. That's what a lot of the things, whether we're taking the dog for a walk, whatever it is, it's trying to pull us out of our heads. Yeah, it's good. Thank you. Sweet boys, we'll break up into breakout groups, I guess. Groups of, what, 5-ish, something like that. And then personal, professional, health, relationships. Try and come up with something. Can be anything over the next 2.5 months.